Next question is from Jay Herrick. Is it more beneficial to break your workouts into splits, or can a full body be just as effective?
Okay, so I know what the studies say, and the studies...
We haven't talked about this in a while.
The studies show that if volume is equated and controlled, that really it doesn't make that big of a difference if you do a split versus a full body workout, so long as frequency of hitting the body parts is kind of similar and total volume is all controlled. And I get that, okay? I've seen the studies. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, here's where I'm going to go kind of different than the studies. Based off of my experience of training lots and lots and lots of different people, generally speaking, for most people on a long-term basis, full body type workouts just work better. And there's a couple reasons why. One, full body workouts tend to promote more frequency of training the body parts. That's number one.
That's a huge one, though.
That's a big one.
Because the thing that I wanted to add to what you're saying right now is that the thing that none of these studies do is they don't factor in what we have got an experience in doing, which is learning about people's behaviors.
Correct.
Yeah. And that is such a huge piece of this. And after you've trained tons of people, you start to pick up on these patterns of, oh, wow, sure, in a perfect 6-week study where we control the body part split, volume is exactly the same, we're splitting hairs on which is better or not. But when you factor in what we tend to see with people's behaviors, and that's if I have a client or clients that are on body part splits, what tends to happen over a 6-week period of time or even months or longer than that is, vacation happens or they get busy one day, or this week they only made 3 days in the gym instead of 5 or 6, which they would need to do in order to hit all the body parts with the same amount of volume.
Or they skip the body parts they're not necessarily big fans of.
Right.
It's not uncommon for a dude to follow a split with good volume, all that stuff, and leg day coming up, I'll just do one of the leg day workouts and I'll skip the other one. When you do a full body routine and you're training your whole body, behaviorally speaking, you tend to be more consistent with what you're doing. Now, here's the other reason. This is more of a physiological one. So let's say, okay, fine, I'm consistent no matter what. What's the big difference? This is my theory, okay? When you train the whole body, first off, the muscle building signals, a lot of it is localized. What that means is if I just work my biceps, most of the muscle building signal goes to the biceps. But there is this systemic muscle building signal that kind of gets sent. So when people just train their arms, most of the gains go in their arms. But studies show that their legs develop a little bit too. Or if you just train one side, if I just train my right arm, it would definitely get bigger and stronger than my left. But we do notice in studies that the left arm gains a little bit of muscle, as if the body's trying to balance itself out, okay? Mm-hmm. So that tells me that there's a systemic muscle building signal that's being sent. Okay, I believe that training the whole body sends a much louder overall systemic muscle building signal than training individual body parts on a split. I think it's a bigger, louder, more effective signal. And by the way, this is how all bodybuilders and strength athletes trained before steroids became a thing. Yeah. Before that became a thing, everybody did full body workouts.
What you're describing, I've actually heard it termed irradiation, like the concept of irradiating. More muscle fibers will be activated as a result of like doing an isolated movement with my arm, like I'm doing a bicep curl. Like my shoulders are going to get affected, my pecs are going to get affected. Like I could brace and anchor my body down with my core. My legs are going to feel a bit of tension with that. So it spans across the body, and you get more bang for your buck that way. And this is why like the total body approach to me just has more functional application, but it also tends to lead more towards muscle development.
Yeah, and you tend to here's a behavioral one. When you're doing 3 full body workouts versus a split where you're hitting different body parts, people tend to choose the most effective exercises with the full body, and with the splits, they tend to do more of the pumping, isolation, type of equipment. And that might be okay if you're a well-developed bodybuilder where you need to do special focus on certain things, but most people are not. Most people are not, stage ready and haven't been training for 10 years or whatever. And so what you find when you see full body workouts is people squat more often, people press more often, they row more often, they do more of these effective exercises. When they do splits, you see more cable exercises and machines and isolation exercises. Now, what does that mean in terms of results? You're going to build more muscle and more strength with those more effective exercises. I actually read an article once where they interviewed several top strength building coaches, people who work with a lot of everyday people, not specifically bodybuilding coaches, but rather coaches who work with, like us, lots of everyday people. And the consensus was that 8 out of 10 people are going to get superior results with a full body routine over a split. In my experience, that's 100% along the lines of what I've experienced. 80% of the people that I've ever trained, which is probably 80% of the people listening to this podcast right now, you're just going to generally get better gains across the board, better aesthetics, better strength by doing, 2 or 3 full body workouts a week rather than doing, a type of split. Now, splits can also be effective, depends on the person. We have a program that is a split. It's called MAP Split. So we wouldn't have created a program if we don't think for some people there's value in that. But if you look at all of our programs, most of them are kind of centered around this full body approach because most of you listening are going to do far better that way. And by the way, I switched to a full body workout routine when I was already advanced. The first, 10 years of my training was splits. Then I started reading old body magazines from the 40s and articles of strongmen and John Grimmick and Steve Reeves and Eugene Sandow, and I said, they all did full body routines. Let me try what happened. I never looked back. I've never done really a split for a long period of time because full body, for me, who's trained for a long time, far superior in terms of the
I
game.
was the same way, but mine really was for the consistency reason. And I got to think that there's a large portion of the people listening right now that would agree that they probably fall in a category more like myself than the crazy bodybuilder who hasn't missed a workout in 8 years. What ends up happening is you have a week that was great. You're in the gym 5 or 6 days a week, and then another week it's 3 or 4 times a week. And what ends up happening when you run splits is something always suffers. Where if I'm running a full body routine, nothing ever suffers. If I miss a day in the gym, I still hit everything evenly. Where that's what's nice about, for me, that's what I have found the most beneficial is that I never am inconsistent with a muscle group because it's inevitable. You're going to have weeks that you miss a day or 2 in the gym here and there. That's completely normal, other priorities in your life. And so when that happens, it's not a big deal because that week you still hit a full body routine. The muscles aren't being under hit.
I also found too that I'm less likely to overreach, in certain body groups, like where I'd do leg day and I would just blast my legs and it would, affect the whole rest of my week. I would have like terrible workouts after that.
That's the other thing.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it this way. Let's say today's chest day, right? My shoulders and triceps are still getting a little bit of work, and then tomorrow's shoulders and triceps, and then the next day's back, but my biceps are going to get a little extra work. You don't have like full days of full rest like you do with full body. I'll say this, and I 100% will stand by it. For the average person, you can develop a decent physique with 2 full, as long as your diet's good and you're otherwise relatively active, 2 full body workouts a week would be phenomenal for most people. Most people would be quite satisfied if they did a good 2-day full body routine. Now, for people who want to get advanced, get really strong, have high strength numbers, 3 days a week of full body. If you had good programming, otherwise good nutrition, good activity, 3 days a week could develop a phenomenal physique. I do, for the most part, I follow that. Now, I'm active on the other days too, but for the most part, my lifting is 3 full body workouts. Now, you go back in time, look these people up. Look up John Grimmick. Look up Steve Reeves. Look up Eugene Sandow. Look up some of those old-time strength and tell me that they don't look phenomenal. And by the way, those guys largely trained naturally. They didn't even take supplements. Creatine didn't exist back then. Look at their physiques. They worked out 3 days a week, maybe 4 days a week, full body routines, and they looked phenomenal. So for most people, full body tends to be the most effective.